So what we are going to do is we're having a Q&A session. Josh and I talked about this over the last couple months. Like, what are we going to do Games Day this year? And
Strip trivia.
Like my pen. So what was important to us is that you guys got an opportunity to ask the questions that have been burning in your brains about Warhammer Online. It seems like every time we do a podcast or a presentation or anything that goes out on the net, I go out and read the boards, whether it's Warhammer Alliance or Only War or whatever it happens to be.
All the 10-ton hammer.
Yeah, 10-ton hammer. 10-ton hammer.
They give us free shirts, so.
So it seems like there's 8,000 questions that comes from everything that we say. It's like we're trying to clarify what our game's about and answer the questions, yet it seems like every question we answer has more questions than it raises. So we wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask anything you want. You can talk about Josh's shoes, you can talk about Warhammer Online, you can talk about classes, careers, RVR, PvP, Public Quest.
How did you get so handsome, Jeff?
Let me tell you, Josh, in 1969. So what we want to do is just start with Q&A. So if you guys want to line up, hopefully you brought questions. Excellent.
I'm having a little trouble finding the system requirements for the game. I don't know if I'm going to be able to play it before I buy it. I mean, you guys got the pre-orders out, so.
That's a great
Unless
question.
you have your money, we'll tell you how to run the game.
So the problem with that question is until we officially announce the system requirements, we're not going to tell you the system requirements, and we haven't officially announced it yet. So I can't answer that question.
The reason for that is that we're continuing to optimize, and we're trying to make sure that we get it to the point where you're not going to have like a liquid-cooled supercomputer and so on and so forth.
It's already at that point.
Yes.
You don't have to.
You don't have to have that. Jeff does have one, but
Do not.
in his car.
So,
Which is actually $3.
What's his car?
It's the Voltron.
I would love to reassure you guys and say things like, you don't have to have the high system requirements. The problem is that it's all relative. I don't know what high or low means, and I can't give you exact. I can tell you that we play it fine on all the machines in our office, and they're not all super duper machines. They really aren't. When I play it on a laptop in my office. I have zero problems with it. So you don't want to go too low, but in general, anything that you've bought in the last 3 or 4 years is probably going to be fine with the game.
Next. How many characters per server are you going to have?
So you mean how many
How many
players can play simultaneously, or how many can you
How
have?
many can I put on a server? Because I'm assuming you're going to have multiple servers.
Correct. So the intent right now is each player that plays can have 10 characters on each server. That make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
When are you guys launching the account management page where we'll be able to put our pre-launch codes in?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer. Steve, you know?
That man with his hand up in the background can tell you.
It'll likely be during open beta just before we go into our Head Start program.
During open beta, just prior to the Head Start program.
That's an open-ended question, Steve. You just led to the next question. But you can ask it.
Luckily, we've
Is the Slayer just an NPC, or can it actually develop into a character?
It's just an NPC.
More now.
I didn't say that.
How much new content are you planning to put out, and when do you plan to put it out?
New content in terms of what? It's a game that we haven't launched yet.
So your first question is, after we launch the game, are we planning on launching more content as we move forward,
Working on
and
new
how often?
content already.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is we're already planning our first 2 years. We already have the first 2 big content patches planned. We already are in planning and pre-production on our first expansion.
Congratulations.
How is the open beta going to work? Are players going to have just free reign, or are you going to continue to have everybody test like specific sections of the game at a time?
Still to be determined. You will have a lot of free reign, but I don't know if we're going to just open the entire game up and let you go and play through it to your heart's content. What we're still talking about.
How big is the world? Like, if I was going to start at the top and go to the bottom, how long will it take me to get to the bottom?
I think you should start at the bottom.
I think you should start at the bottom.
Bottom is dangerous?
That's just, the top is always dangerous. The top's way up there. It's a huge world in terms of running from one side to the other. I've never actually done it. Because
It takes way too long.
take a really long time. Now, if you were wearing some sort of gyrocopter backpack, you'd obviously be flying a little bit
If
faster.
you're riding a boar.
If you were riding a boar, yeah. Ooh, we're dinosaur. Jeff actually does ride a dinosaur now. I actually have no idea how long it takes to run from one side to the other. It's continental in scope. It's a massive, massive area, and obviously you've got 3 specific geographic areas that you'd have to be running through if you wanted to do the Forrest Gump coast to coast run through the entire world. The other problem you're going to be running into, though, is that as you're moving through that world, you're having to fight your way through the world, because there's obviously RVR territory all throughout, so you probably have to, if you were just planning to run the whole time, you'd have to zigzag around that. So 6 years.
I don't know if that's true.
How are you doing with other online games in your fan base, like WoW, for example?
What exactly is your question? How do we deal with them?
Yeah, how are you like?
Kill them.
We have people ask that a lot. What they're looking for is us to say that more than anything on earth, we want to destroy all of our competitors. But the honest answer is the success that other titles have had over the last few years have done nothing but help this industry. People look at the post-WoW world and say, oh, it must be really tough to release one of these games these days. It was way harder back when we released Camelot. The failure rate was 8 out of 10 for MMOs that came out. Failure, failure, failure. What has happened over the last few years, and it's not just WoW that's done this, it's the increase in quality, the increase in attention, the player base worldwide, the player base in North America, Europe, and so forth, has expanded exponentially. So we're actually really glad that these other titles have come out, really sort of broadened the audience, shown people that this is not just sort of a niche hobby. This is a big deal, major style of gaming that has a lot of legs. So we love them. They're wonderful people.
And we ask this question all the time. What's important to understand is that Warhammer Online, while of course we compete with all these other MMOs, we compete by setting ourselves apart. We compete by having unique things that make our game great that other people can't do very well. RVR is, of course, our premier. Nobody does RVR, nobody does PvP like we do. It has meaning in the world, it has meaning to your character, it's all about progression, it's all about pride. Nobody does that. So we focus on things like RVR, public quests, the Tome of Knowledge, things that no one else does. And then we also provide a great foundational game on top of that, or underneath that.
How big are you guys looking at for server sizes?
So
Population. Yeah.
So simultaneous population?
Yeah.
So that's a hard question in that the answer is this, and you're not going to like it because it's not a definite number. The answer is whatever is the right number. And the right, bear with me.
At least 2.
Yeah, at least 2. One on each side. The right number is where do we get the best population density in RVR specifically that is the most fun. And so that's a number that we're playing with right now in beta. It's like, do we want it to be 2,000? Do we want it to be 4,000? And it's a number that we probably won't lock down until just before we launch, especially as we go into open beta and we start to see those numbers play out. So technically we can put a lot of people on our servers, but we want to make sure it's the right amount. Thank you. Sure.
Oh my God, it's in writing.
One question.
You have to do it in one breath.
One of the things most on my mind is that the end game in this seems to be all about the PvP, the RVR, the interaction back and forth. So one concern on my mind is how you plan to deal with potential population or faction imbalances, either in terms of population or 2 to 3 mega guilds like the Goon Squad or something on one side, putting the server on, for lack of a better term, putting the server on farm status.
Okay, so this is another question we answer all the time. And I'll give you the same answer that I give everybody else, and I'll give it to you the best I can. Without trying, so I hesitate to give you every little last piece of things that we're doing because other games have the same problem on their PvP servers generally. We'll have it on all of our servers. And I don't want to tip our hat to them 100%. But we have 3 major things that we're doing. One of them has to do with, sorry, I'm tiptoeing around this a little bit. One of them has to do with convincing players when they first start the game to come to certain servers by giving them bonuses so that they will come to a server that is potentially underpopulated by realm. The other thing that we're doing is, so at some point, as per the last question, every server has to have a cap. Like there's a number that we want on the server. So all other games out there have server caps, and they do it by server. We do it by realm. So when you come in as a destruction player, if your destruction realm is filled up on that server, you can't get on. So we enforce population. Nice. And the third way is once you're in game, if your side is just getting trounced, like they're just getting smoked constantly for weeks on end, however much that may be, we're going to provide help in the server, on the server for sides that are just constantly losing. Does that help? Make sense? So those are the three big things.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
For Endgame content, you have the RBR, the keeps, the city sieges, the guild halls, the standards, all that stuff.
Can we give him a microphone and have him stand up here?
Keep talking.
What do you have planned specifically for guilds to do at the end of the game, as far as
Other than killing each
Any other
other?
role?
I mean, other than do you have specific incentives for me to go and beat up the goon squad?
Man, so this is a hard question to answer, not because I don't have an answer, but because the answer is huge, and it's very convoluted in how we make the game. The things that we do from the very beginning of the game, we've planned out incentive after incentive after incentive. All of these cookies that you get to gobble up as you move through the game. And there's so many of them that I could list them off for you, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense because they're tied into everything that you do in the game. So for example, as a player, I come into the game, and I have a bunch of different advancement systems. Those advancement systems are things like standard XP. I gain XP, I level up my character. And I think people have a tendency to look at that and go, hey, I get to level 40, the game's over, right? Wrong. So that's the start of our game. Other advancement systems include things like other advancement systems are things like the Renown advancement system. So don't think about other games and how this works, this Renown or RVR advancement system. If you want to compare it to something, compare it to Dark Age of Camelot. It has meaning to your character in many different ways. You actually gain stat advances, abilities, tactics. You gain mastery points, so you can use mastery points in your character. This is all just from Renown. You also gain titles. You gain access to certain types of armor. You get loot from RVR. So RVR and Renown advancement is kind of the next thing. The Tome of Knowledge is an advancement system in and of itself. Through the Tome of Knowledge, you're gaining experience. You're gaining tactics generally. You're gaining new titles. In some cases, you might be gaining trophies. You might be gaining special abilities. Then beyond that, sorry, I can keep going on this.
Do you want me to?
No. Then beyond that, this is just on a personal level, you have armor sets. So as a player, there are, let's call them around 20 armor sets that you can advance through in the game. The first one of these becomes available to you right around level 5 or 6. So as you're advancing through the game, there are armor sets that are there for you to get in PvE. There are armor sets for you to get in RVR. There's armor sets that just come from capital cities. There's armor sets that just come from dungeons. So this is just another way to advance your character and make him more powerful, and that goes above level 40 also. Then, as many people will, there are guilds. We want players to join guilds. It's super important that there's a community in our game. And everything that we do, we are suggesting to the players that they go join a guild. We're pushing them together in subtle ways so that they're meeting each other and they're thinking about guilding up and they're meeting friends and they're doing this thing, and it flows naturally through the game. So as a guild, you can level up your guild, and it actually has meaning in the game. So it's things like you level up your guild, there's 40 guild levels. It takes a long time. Guild leveling is pretty hard. And you unlock things like bank vaults, expanded bank vaults, standards and banners, the ability to claim keeps. the ability to get dues and taxes from your players. So that's
Customizable heraldry.
customizable heraldry, sure, yeah, absolutely. Which is awesome, by the way. So that's just another way that you can advance. Plus, above the level cap, not only is there things like going to keeps, going to fortresses, attacking enemy capital cities, but remember, the capital cities is just another way of unlocking content. So depending upon the city ranking, depending upon the level of the city that you're in, you can unlock all sorts of new content, new dungeons, new quests, new adventures to go on. The enemies can go and take that city and partake in those dungeons and the content that's there. Above and beyond that, there are several big dungeons that are not made for big raids, that are made for really 6 people. That's what we kind of target these at. But these are high-level dungeons that are really for people who don't want to RVR. I don't know why you don't want to, but if you don't want to RVR, you want something you want to do tonight, you don't want to go kill players, whatever, there are some fantastic dungeons like Lost Vale that are there for you as a challenge to try to kill. How's that?